of every social group, every workplace, every friendship, and every family gathering, there is a hidden battle taking place. Most people assume the strongest person is the one who speaks the loudest, dominates every conversation, or always manages to get their way. Others believe the most dangerous person is the manipulator who controls people through fear, guilt, or pressure. Yet some of the most fascinating discoveries in psychology point in a completely different direction. The person with the greatest influence is often the one who remains quiet, observes carefully, and understands emotions better than everyone else in the room. This person does not need attention. They do not need to prove themselves. They do not react impulsively. They simply watch, listen, and learn. Over time, that ability creates a form of power that many people never notice until it is too late. This is where the story of the dangerous empath begins. Not the empath most people picture. Not the overly emotional person who absorbs everyone's problems and sacrifices their own well-being. Not the person who constantly gives second chances and puts everyone else's needs first. We are talking about a very different kind of empath. One who has learned through experience. One who has faced disappointment, betrayal, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion. One who has transformed sensitivity into awareness and awareness into intelligence. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it often happens silently. While others focus on controlling conversations, the mature empath focuses on understanding human behavior. While others react emotionally, the mature empath studies patterns. While others become distracted by words, the mature empath pays attention to actions. And this difference changes everything. In today's video, we will uncover why emotional intelligence can be far more powerful than emotional reactions. Why highly aware empaths often become difficult to manipulate, and how silence can sometimes reveal more strength than confrontation. We will explore the psychological traits that separate ordinary empathy from advanced emotional intelligence. We will look at how mature empaths develop exceptional pattern recognition, why they often see motives that others miss, and why many manipulative personalities become uncomfortable around people they cannot easily control. We will also uncover the surprising reason why the strongest empaths stop explaining themselves, stop seeking validation, and stop fighting battles that no longer deserve their energy. Most importantly, by the end of this video, you will understand why the most dangerous empath is not dangerous because they harm people. They are dangerous because they understand people. Their power comes from awareness, self-control, and the ability to remain calm when others lose control. The final insight may completely change the way you view empathy, emotional intelligence, and personal power. So stay with us until the very end, because each part builds upon the last, and the biggest lesson appears when all the pieces come together. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy deep psychological insights, human behavior, emotional intelligence, and the hidden dynamics of power, make sure to subscribe and join us for more videos like this. Now let's begin. To understand why the most dangerous empath becomes so powerful, we first need to understand what makes an empath different from most people. Empathy is often described as the ability to feel and understand the emotions of others. On the surface, that sounds simple. Everyone experiences empathy to some degree. Most people can recognize when someone is sad, happy, frustrated, or afraid. But empaths tend to experience this awareness on a much deeper level. They do not simply hear words. They notice the emotions hiding behind those words. They pay attention to small details that many people overlook. A slight change in tone of voice, a forced smile, a brief pause before an answer, a nervous movement, sudden shift in energy when a certain topic appears. While most people focus on what is being said, empaths often focus on what is not being said. This creates a unique form of social awareness. They naturally collect information from conversations without even trying. They notice who becomes uncomfortable under pressure. They notice who changes their personality depending on who is in the room. They notice who constantly seeks validation and who quietly struggles with insecurity. Over time, this ability allows them to see layers of human behavior that remain invisible to many others. Because of this heightened awareness, empaths often feel deeply connected to the emotional atmosphere around them. A room filled with tension can affect them immediately. A person's sadness can stay with them long after a conversation ends. A hidden conflict between two people can become obvious to them before anyone says a single word. This sensitivity is not magic. It is the result of constant observation. Their minds are continuously gathering emotional information. In many cases, they become skilled at reading situations long before other people understand what is happening. This is why friends often come to them for advice. This is why strangers sometimes open up to them unexpectedly. People feel understood around them. They feel seen, they feel heard. The empath creates a sense of emotional safety that encourages honesty. Yet this gift comes with a cost that many people never fully understand. The same awareness that helps an empath understand others can also become a source of pain. When someone feels the emotions of others so intensely, it becomes difficult to separate their own feelings from the feelings surrounding them. They begin carrying emotional burdens that do not belong to them. They worry about problems they cannot solve. They absorb stress that is not theirs to carry. They spend hours thinking about conversations, conflicts, and situations involving other people. Their compassion becomes so strong that they sometimes place the needs of others above their own well-being. They want everyone to feel understood. They want everyone to heal. They want everyone to be happy. Unfortunately, the world does not always reward this kind of kindness. In fact, it often attracts people who are looking for someone willing to give more than they receive. This is where the early journey of many empaths begins. They enter relationships with good intentions. They believe understanding can solve most problems. When someone hurts them, they try to understand the reason behind the behavior. When someone lies to them, they search for hidden pain that might explain the dishonesty. When someone treats them poorly, they convince themselves that the person is simply struggling. Because they naturally see the emotions behind actions, they often excuse behavior that others would reject immediately. They give endless chances. They tell themselves that people can change. They believe patience will eventually lead to growth. They spend hours explaining their feelings, hoping communication will solve everything. They forgive repeatedly because they understand that everyone makes mistakes. They ignore warning signs because they focus on potential rather than reality. While others walk away, the empath stays. While others create boundaries, the empath tries harder. While others protect themselves, the empath continues giving. At first, this approach feels noble. It feels compassionate. It feels right. But over time, a painful pattern begins to emerge. The empath discovers that understanding someone does not automatically change them. Understanding why someone lies does not stop the lying. Understanding why someone manipulates does not stop the manipulation. Understanding why someone disrespects boundaries does not suddenly create respect. This lesson is one of the hardest lessons an empath ever learns because it challenges a belief they have carried for years. They believe that enough patience, enough understanding, and enough compassion could fix almost anything. Reality teaches a different lesson. Some people appreciate kindness. Some people grow because of it. But others simply take advantage of it. As the years pass, many empaths begin experiencing emotional exhaustion. They feel drained by relationships that demand constant emotional labor. They become tired of carrying conversations that always revolve around someone else's problems. They become frustrated by giving support without receiving support in return. The emotional weight grows heavier with every disappointment. Every broken promise leaves a mark. Every betrayal creates another layer of caution. Every ignored boundary teaches another lesson. Slowly, the empath begins noticing a pattern. The same situations appear again and again, only with different faces, different names, different circumstances, but the underlying behavior remains the same. This realization changes the way they view people. Instead of focusing only on emotions, they begin paying attention to actions. Instead of listening only to explanations, they start observing results. One of the most important transformations occurs when the empath learns the difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. Earlier in life, these concepts often seemed identical. Helping others felt like the right thing to do, regardless of personal cost. But experience reveals an uncomfortable truth. Constant self-sacrifice does not always help people. In many situations, it encourages unhealthy behavior. Some individuals become dependent on endless forgiveness. Others become comfortable crossing boundaries because they know there will be no consequences. The empath slowly realizes that kindness without limits can become harmful. Not only to themselves, but sometimes to others as well. True compassion does not mean allowing people to continue destructive patterns. True compassion sometimes requires distance. Sometimes it requires saying no. Sometimes it requires stepping away completely. This realization is rarely dramatic. It usually develops through years of experience. The empath begins reflecting on past relationships. They remember all the times they ignored their instincts. They remember the moments when they saw warning signs but chose hope instead. They remember defending people who never defended them. They remember giving energy to those who never appreciated it. These memories become lessons. Pain becomes a teacher. Disappointment becomes education. The empath starts recognizing patterns much faster than before. They become less interested in promises and more interested in consistency. They stop focusing on isolated events and start examining repeated behavior. This shift marks the beginning of a new stage in their development. For the first time, the empath begins understanding that awareness alone is not enough. Awareness without control often creates suffering. Feeling every emotion in the room does not create strength. Understanding every person's pain does not automatically create wisdom. Without emotional control, empathy can become overwhelming. It can lead to burnout, anxiety, frustration, and constant emotional exhaustion. This is why many empaths spend years feeling trapped between compassion and self-protection. They know how others feel, but they struggle to manage how those feelings affect them. The breakthrough comes when empathy meets emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is often misunderstood. Many people assume it simply means being emotional or sensitive. In reality, emotional intelligence involves understanding emotions clearly and responding to them effectively. It means recognizing feelings without becoming controlled by them. It means remaining aware while maintaining balance. This distinction changes everything. The immature empath feels emotions intensely. The mature empath understands emotions deeply. One reacts. The other observes. One absorbs everything. The other processes information without losing themselves in it. As emotional intelligence develops, the empath begins learning skills that were previously missing. Self-awareness becomes stronger. They start identifying their own emotional triggers. They recognize the situations that drain their energy. They understand their strengths and weaknesses more clearly. Instead of being overwhelmed by every emotional experience, they begin creating space between observation and reaction. This space becomes incredibly important. It allows them to think before responding. It allows them to remain calm during conflict. It allows them to see situations more objectively. Emotional regulation becomes another crucial part of their growth. Earlier in life, they may have felt responsible for fixing every problem around them. Now they begin understanding that not every problem belongs to them. Not every emotional storm requires their involvement. They learn to remain centered even when others become emotional. This does not mean they stop caring. It means they stop allowing other people's emotions to dictate their own state of mind. They learn how to support others without drowning alongside them. Boundaries also become a central part of their transformation. For many empaths, boundaries once felt uncomfortable. They worried that saying no would seem selfish. They worried that creating distance would hurt others. Emotional intelligence teaches a different perspective. Healthy boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out. They are filters designed to protect emotional well-being. They allow healthy relationships to thrive while limiting access to those who consistently create harm. Through boundaries, the empath finally learns that protecting their peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Perhaps the most misunderstood part of this evolution is detachment. Many people assume detachment means becoming cold or uncaring. The mature empath discovers that true detachment means maintaining emotional balance regardless of what is happening around them. They no longer feel responsible for saving everyone. They no longer chase people who repeatedly walk away. They no longer waste energy convincing others to change. They accept reality more quickly. They accept people as they are, rather than who they hope they will become. This acceptance creates a powerful sense of freedom. The empath is no longer trapped by unrealistic expectations. They are no longer exhausted by endless emotional battles. They are able to see situations clearly and make decisions based on reality rather than wishful thinking. At this stage, a remarkable shift takes place. The empath still notices emotions. They still understand pain. They still care deeply about people. But the relationship they have with those emotions is completely different. They observe without absorbing. They understand without carrying. They support without sacrificing to themselves. Their awareness remains intact, but it is now guided by wisdom. Their compassion remains strong, but it is protected by boundaries. Their kindness remains genuine, but it is balanced by self-respect. They have not become less caring. They have become more conscious. They still care. They simply stop sacrificing themselves. As the empath becomes more emotionally intelligent, another transformation begins to appear. It is subtle at first. Most people do not notice it immediately. Friends may think the empath has become quieter. Family members may think they have become more distant. People who once relied on emotional reactions may suddenly feel confused around them. The reason is simple. The empath is no longer responding the way they used to. Earlier in life, they reacted to everything. They defended themselves when accused unfairly. They explained their intentions when misunderstood. They felt guilty when someone tried to make them feel responsible for problems they did not create. They entered emotional arguments, hoping that truth and understanding would solve the conflict. But after years of experience, something changes. The empath begins noticing that certain people are not looking for understanding at all. They are looking for reactions. They are looking for emotional energy. They are looking for control. Many manipulative people operate through emotional leverage. They provoke reactions because reactions give them information. If someone becomes defensive, the manipulator learns where their insecurities exist. If someone becomes guilty, the manipulator learns how to influence their decisions. If someone becomes angry, the manipulator learns how to keep them emotionally distracted. If someone constantly explains themselves, the manipulator learns that they can keep shifting the conversation and forcing the other person to prove their worth. This is why emotional manipulation often depends on reactions. Without reactions, the strategy begins to lose its power. Without emotional engagement, the game becomes difficult to play. The emotionally intelligent empath eventually understands this dynamic. They realize that not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every criticism deserves an explanation. Not every attempt at provocation deserves a response. This realization creates a dramatic shift in behavior. Instead of reacting immediately, they pause. Instead of arguing endlessly, they listen. Instead of becoming emotionally trapped in every conflict, they observe. Most importantly, they remember. This ability to remember patterns becomes one of their greatest strengths. Manipulative individuals often depend on short-term memory. They expect people to focus on the current conversation while forgetting everything that happened before. They expect others to overlook repeated behavior. They expect isolated apologies to erase years of inconsistency. The mature empath no longer falls into this trap. They listen carefully, but they compare every new action to previous actions. They compare every promise to past promises. They compare every explanation to past explanations. They are no longer judging a person based on a single conversation. They are examining the entire pattern. This is why silence becomes so powerful. Most people think silence is weakness because they assume power comes from speaking. In reality, silence often removes the very thing a manipulator needs most: leverage. A manipulator cannot easily control someone who refuses to react emotionally. They cannot easily create guilt in someone who understands what is happening. They cannot easily confuse someone who pays attention to patterns instead of excuses. The emotionally intelligent empath learns that silence is not always the absence of strength. Sometimes it is evidence of strength. Sometimes it means they already understand everything they need to understand. Sometimes it means they have recognized a pattern and no longer feel the need to debate it. This makes many manipulative personalities uncomfortable. They are used to controlling the emotional direction of conversations. They are used to creating confusion. They are used to keeping people focused on endless explanations and emotional arguments. But the silent empath changes the dynamic completely. The empath is no longer trying to win the argument. They are trying to understand the behavior. They are no longer focused on words. They are focused on consistency. They are no longer asking whether someone sounds sincere. They are asking whether someone's actions support their words. This shift makes manipulation far less effective. The manipulator suddenly realizes that their usual strategies are not working. The emotional hooks no longer create the same response. The guilt no longer works. The pressure no longer works. The confusion no longer works. For perhaps the first time, they are dealing with someone who sees the strategy itself. This is one of the least understood forms of power. People often assume power comes from dominance, aggression, or control. The mature empath discovers a different kind of power, the power of understanding, the power of observation, the power of emotional discipline. Once a person understands the strategy being used against them, that strategy loses much of its effectiveness. It becomes difficult to manipulate someone who understands manipulation. It becomes difficult to create guilt in someone who recognizes emotional pressure. It becomes difficult to create confusion in someone who pays attention to reality instead of performance. This is why emotionally intelligent empaths often appear calm in situations that would overwhelm other people. Their calmness is not ignorance, it is awareness. They understand what is happening beneath the surface. This awareness leads directly into one of the empath's most powerful abilities, pattern recognition. While many people focus on individual events, mature empaths become experts at recognizing patterns. This skill develops naturally through years of observation. They have spent so much time studying emotions, relationships, and behavior that they begin seeing connections others miss. They notice repeated excuses. They notice inconsistent stories. They notice promises that never become action. They notice hidden intentions buried beneath attractive words. They notice emotional manipulation cycles that repeat again and again with remarkable predictability. A person may tell a convincing story once. The empath listens. A second story appears that contradicts the first. The empath notices. A third explanation appears that changes the details again. The empath remembers. Most people evaluate each event separately. The empath connects them together. This difference is incredibly important. Looking at isolated moments can create confusion. Looking at patterns creates clarity. A single excuse may sound reasonable. 10 excuses begin to reveal something deeper. A single broken promise may be understandable. Repeated broken promises reveal character. A single emotional outburst may be a bad day. Constant emotional outbursts reveal a pattern. The mature empath stops becoming distracted by individual moments because they understand that patterns reveal truth more reliably than isolated events. This ability often surprises people. They assume the empath is focused only on emotions. In reality, the mature empath becomes highly analytical. They begin collecting information over time. They notice how people behave when they are under pressure. They notice how people treat those who cannot offer them anything. They notice how people react when boundaries are introduced. They notice how people behave when they no longer get their way. These observations create a detailed picture that becomes difficult to ignore. The empath starts seeing where relationships are heading long before the outcome becomes obvious to everyone else. One reason this ability is so powerful is because human beings can perform for short periods of time. Most people can create a positive impression temporarily. They can say the right words, they can act kind, they can appear honest, they can appear caring. But maintaining a false image forever is extremely difficult. Eventually, reality begins to leak through. Small inconsistencies appear. Contradictions emerge. Hidden motives become visible. Emotional patterns repeat. This is why mature empaths place so much value on consistency. They understand a simple truth. People can fake moments. They cannot fake patterns forever. The more experience an empath gains, the more confidence they develop in this understanding. Earlier in life, they often doubted themselves. They ignored instincts. They dismissed concerns. They gave people the benefit of the doubt even when warning signs existed. But repeated experience teaches them to trust what patterns reveal. They stop arguing with reality. They stop making excuses for behavior that consistently causes harm. They stop believing that every problem can be solved through understanding alone. Once they recognize a pattern clearly, their perspective changes. The relationship changes. The conversation changes. The emotional investment changes. Because once the empath sees the pattern, the outcome often becomes irreversible. This leads to one of the most dramatic changes in the empath's entire journey. The moment they stop explaining. Earlier in life, the empath explained everything. They explained their intentions. They explained their feelings. They explained their boundaries. They explained why something hurt them. They explained why a behavior was unhealthy. They explained because they genuinely believed understanding could create change. They believed that if they communicated clearly enough, patiently enough, and compassionately enough, the other person would finally understand. Sometimes this worked. Often it did not. Over time, they began noticing a painful reality. Healthy people usually understand after a conversation or two. Unhealthy people often understand perfectly well, but simply do not care. This distinction changes everything. The empath starts realizing that endless explanations rarely change someone who benefits from misunderstanding them. Endless explanations rarely change someone committed to manipulation. Endless explanations rarely change someone who repeatedly ignores boundaries. In many cases, explanations simply provide more information for future manipulation. The empath begins recognizing that understanding is not always the problem. Willingness is often the problem. As this realization grows, their behavior changes. They explain less, they observe more. They spend less time defending themselves and more time evaluating actions. They spend less time trying to convince people and more time accepting reality. This acceptance is not pessimism, it is clarity. They stop trying to force people to become who they wish they were. They stop trying to rescue relationships that require effort from only one side. They stop trying to solve problems that others refuse to acknowledge. Many people misunderstand this stage. They think the empath has become cold. In reality, the empath has become realistic. They understand that not every battle deserves their energy. They understand that not every misunderstanding requires correction. They understand that some people reveal their intentions through repeated behavior. Once that behavior becomes clear, additional explanations become unnecessary. At this point, silence becomes one of the strongest boundaries they possess. Not because they lack words. Not because they are afraid. Not because they have given up. Their silence exists because they already understand. They understand the pattern. They understand the motivation. They understand the likely outcome. They no longer feel the need to participate in conversations designed to go nowhere. Their silence is often the result of clarity rather than confusion. Eventually, this process reaches its final stage, the transformation that turns the empath into the person many find impossible to control. There is no dramatic revenge story. There is no emotional explosion. There is no attempt to punish anyone. The mature empath reaches a point where they simply stop investing energy into situations that repeatedly prove unhealthy. They withdraw attention. They withdraw access. They withdraw emotional investment. To outsiders, this may appear sudden. In reality, the decision has usually been forming for a long time. It is the result of countless observations, repeated patterns, and hard-earned lessons. What makes this so powerful is that the departure is intentional. It is not driven by anger. It is not driven by impulse. It is not driven by the desire to hurt someone. The empath leaves because they finally understand what cannot be changed. They understand that some people only learn through consequences. They understand that continued access is a privilege, not a guarantee. They understand that protecting their peace is more valuable than winning an argument. And once they reach this level of understanding, they stop fighting battles that no longer deserve their attention. The most dangerous empath is not the one who fights back. It is the one who no longer needs to fight at all. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Empathy alone does not create power. Empathy creates awareness. Pain creates wisdom. Emotional intelligence creates control. Boundaries create strength, and silence creates a kind of power that many people never fully understand. The greatest mistake people make is assuming that an empath's strength comes from their emotions. In reality, their greatest strength comes from understanding. Understanding people, understanding behavior, understanding motives, and most importantly, understanding themselves. The most dangerous empath is not dangerous because they seek revenge. They are not dangerous because they manipulate others. They are not dangerous because they want control. They become dangerous to unhealthy people because they are no longer easy to influence. They see beyond words, beyond appearances, beyond promises, beyond excuses. They recognize patterns that others ignore. They understand emotions without becoming trapped by them. They know the difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. They know when to stay. They know when to leave. And they know that protecting their peace is not selfish. It is necessary. Once an empath reaches this level of growth, a remarkable transformation takes place. They stop chasing validation from people who refuse to understand them. They stop explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop carrying responsibilities that never belong to them. They stop trying to save everyone they meet. Instead, they become calm when others expect chaos. They become observant when others become reactive. They become intentional when others act on impulse. Their energy becomes focused. Their decisions become clearer. Their presence becomes stronger. Not because they have learned how to control others, but because they have finally learned how to control themselves. And perhaps that is the most powerful lesson of all. True power is not found in winning every argument. It is not found in proving people wrong. It is not found in forcing others to change. True power is found in mastering your own emotions, protecting your own peace, and refusing to give your energy to battles that no longer deserve it. Few things are more powerful than an empath who has finally learned that lesson. Before you go, take a moment and ask yourself this question. Are you still absorbing the emotions of everyone around you, or are you learning to understand them without losing yourself in the process? The answer may reveal where you are on your own journey. If you enjoyed this video and found value in these insights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And if this topic resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience may help someone else who is walking the same path. Thank you for watching, and remember, the strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. Sometimes, the strongest person is the one who understands everything, says very little, and has finally learned the power of walking away. We'll see you in the next video.